welcome Diane on screen, because Diane, you have been looking in depth at what's been happening with powerful organisations such as the Fabians.
Yes, thanks, Brian. Hello, Ben. It's good to be here today to talk about this. I've been looking in particular at the Fabians. There are a lot of organizations around the world that are basically hidden in plain sight. And I want to, at this point, welcome Professor Gloria Moss, who's my guest today. She wrote an article for a UK column that was published a few weeks ago called "The Secret Society Dedicated to a New World Order, the Fabians." And it's got some phenomenal responses from viewers, from other people on the UK column team, and it really exposed quite a bit. So at this point, I'd like to invite Professor Moss into the program and maybe just summarize a bit about your article, and then let's talk about how this is relevant to what we're talking about today in the news. So hello, Gloria. Welcome to UK column.
Hi, Diane. It's great to be on the show.
So if you want to just go ahead and go through a little bit of your article and kind of how you got to this article, how you reached this. I know as your editor that you started looking at the assisted dying bill, and that somehow led you to this Fabian organization. Do you want to maybe talk a little about the process and what you learned as you were going through the writing?
Well, yes. My way in, as you say, was the assisted dying bill, which is awaiting its third vote in Parliament. And I noticed deep concerns from numerous sources, including concerns from the SPUC Society, the Protection of the Unborn Child, who highlighted the extent to which the bill put vulnerable people at risk, the fact that assisted dying could not be controlled easily, that assisted dying would undermine palliative care, and that the purported pretext for the bill, terminal illness and intractable pain, were not, in fact, the leading causes of assisted dying in other countries, because, of course, there are many other countries that have introduced similar bills, and we have a lot of experience to draw on, including a US study, 2015, that said that there was a link between assisted dying legislation and a 6% increase in suicides across the board, more than doubling amongst the 65 plus age group to 14.5% of suicides, creating an increased inclination to suicide. Well, this is horrific. And then I came across an article by Dawn Lester. Do look out her Substack article, listing out the drugs that would be used that would create brain death, not death, would provide the perfect climate, perfect conditions for organ harvesting. And then there was a committee appointed to look into the bill, where the committee, 23 MPs strong, 14 proponents, only 9 opponents. So many safeguards were voted away. And there was selective calling of witnesses. Brilliant article on that by Unheard. And just before the bank holiday, the government released a report talking about savings to the NHS over a 10-year period from assisted dying of £60 million. Perhaps they timed it so that not too many people would notice in the run-up to the bank holiday. So that was all pretty horrific. So I started to look more into that, only to discover that many of the main players are members of the Fabian Society, not least the proponent of the bill, Kim Leadbeater. She spoke at a Fabian Women's Network conference in September last year, and she wrote a report under their imprint. And then there were 2 ministers on the committee, which is more than you usually find in a private member's bill. That's Sarah Sackman and Stephen Kinnock. Sarah Sackman, Minister for Courts and Legal Services, indubitably a Fabian. She was elected to the executive committee of the Fabian Society over 4 years. That's 2015 to 2019. And the other minister, what do you think of that? This fact, he's Minister for Care and a proponent of an assisted dying bill. That's Stephen Kinnock. He was author of a Fabian report and speaker with other Fabians at Fabians events. So His father, Neil, I believe, was a Fabian, so maybe he's followed in his father's footsteps. And of course, presiding over all of this is the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and he's a Fabian in line with all Labour Party Prime Ministers. In July, if you wanted evidence, 2024, the Fabian Society itself referred to working with a Fabian Prime Minister. So that was my wake-up call, really. And I thought, what is it with the Fabian Society that's so top-heavy in the assisted dying bill? And so I thought I'd do some more research. And of course, with such an important topic, it's really vital to use evidence-based critical thinking. And actually, that's the subject of a book that I wrote with second author Katherine Armitage. And it's called Light Bulb Moments and the Power of Critical Thinking. It's a weapon we all have in our minds, brilliantly exemplified by UK Column. And so I adopted that approach, evidence-based, very important because I hadn't been taught anything about Fabian Society at school, nor in university, and I've been to university several times for first, second, and third degrees, and not surprising perhaps because mainstream school and university is not necessarily where we might go for truth. Truth University Press has published a book on that subject, The Dark Side of Academia, How Truth is Suppressed. So one shouldn't perhaps be too surprised. And certainly if you're interested in that book or the critical thinking book, you can get them from the website of Truth University, which is www.truthuniversity.co.uk. They're both good reads, by the way. Now, we shouldn't be too surprised if we didn't know about it, as I say, because mainstream education it hasn't always been there in recent decades to tell us the whole truth and nothing but the truth, anything but. But increasing the difficulties was the fact that the Fabians themselves, their original crest, many of you may know this, was in fact a wolf in sheep's clothing. So their objectives were overtly cloaked. They didn't mean the public to know too much about them, I think. And so I set off, armed with critical thinking, in search of information. And some of this information, much of it, you can find in the article that I wrote for UK Column. And from that, you can glean that the Fabian Society has broadly three main policies, three main parts to its agenda. And one is indicated in the title of the article, the creation of a new world order. That means the destruction, doesn't it, of the status quo. And we can see this exemplified in the stained glass window, currently in the London School of Economics. That was one of the places I did postgraduate studies. You can see it exemplified in the stained glass window that was designed by none other than playwright Bernard Shaw. Now, if you look carefully, you can see two characters on the right. Let's just go back to the stained glass window in terms of the image. There are two figures there on the right. They are destroying the world. And the man on the right in green is Bernard Shaw. And lurking behind, you may cast a glimpse, is that crest of the wolf in sheep's clothing. So this is their agenda, to destroy the world and create something different. What tools have they been using? Well, Brown has mentioned immigration, and that has been, it seems, a major tool in their weaponry. And so former Fabian Society chair, Roy Jenkins, some of you may remember him, he promoted multiculturalism and cultural diversity, so-called, deprioritizing the indigenous culture. And such an agenda was followed by the Blair-Brown administrations. And some commentators have suggested that Fabian Labour policy, because that's what we have to call it, I think, Fabian Labour policy, was designed to actually change the ethnic and racial makeup of British society, coming close to an act of genocide, some people might say. And note that the current Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, who has been chair of the Scottish Fabian Commissioners, is sitting there as Home Secretary. And I don't see too much going on to stop, as Brian said, the immigration. So that's policy number one, creation of a new world order. Policy number two, eugenics. Many of the founding members were in favour of a eugenics agenda. Sidney Webb, with his wife Beatrice, in a book of 1911, The Prevention of Destitution, in a chapter of that book, they advocated a eugenics approach to solve the problems of poverty. Bernard Shaw, briefly a lecturer at the Eugenic Education Society, he wrote that, this is his quote, "Nothing but a eugenic religion can save our civilization from the fate that has overcome all previous civilizations." And that's not all. Brother of Aldous Huxley, Fabian, brother Julian Huxley, you can see a photo here. He was former chair of the British Eugenics Society. He even advocated for transhumanism. He actually coined the term transhumanism and the idea that humans could be improved through science and technology.
Gloria, I'm going to say thank you very, very much for taking us through that. We have to move on at the moment. I hope you'll be joining us for extra at the end of today's news, and we can have a look at this in more detail. But you've absolutely taken us through the key things there. That basically we've got powers way beyond politics that are driving the policies that are having these disastrous effects on us today. And if we have any viewers who haven't read your article on the UK Column website, encourage people to go and do that.